Welcome. Learning Science Goes Online is a series of short videos in which we analyze key findings from the education research literature and then connect those to the practice of designing and teaching online courses. In this video, we're going to be looking into organization and findability in online courses. And in particular, we're going to be asking the question, is there an advantage to a well-organized online course? I'm going to start with an analogy, which is that studying course organization is a little bit like trying to study human diet. We know that people who eat healthy diets also are more likely to engage in healthy lifestyle choices. And so as a result, it's a little hard to tell whether better health outcomes are associated with their diet or their other activities in their lives. And by the same token, when we look at a high-quality, well-organized course, it's often the case that there's better instructional design and more careful planning of the pedagogy in that course. So it's really hard to separate the signal of course organization from other habits or features of the course. When we look at human diet studies, the highest quality studies are usually experimental in nature, which means that volunteers are randomized into different groups that receive different diets, and then outcomes are measured over time. And so looking at course organization, the best studies are usually the same. We take a high quality course and then make some changes to it so it's not as organized and see what happens. So the study we're going to look at today is an experimental study. In this case, we have two different control courses that were actually used for a college level class. And then those courses were taken by the researchers and modified to create what are called low findability versions of each of those courses. And in this case, low findability means that particular tasks within the course were made more difficult to find. So for example, it might be harder to find the syllabus or harder to figure out which assignment is due. And then the researchers created different tasks within the courses. So for both the control course and the low findability course, it was the same task, but the difference is in the structure of the course itself. And then after completing the tasks, the participants in this study answered surveys about their experiences in the courses themselves. Of course, this study has some limitations, but the biggest limitation that's worth surfacing right at the top is that this doesn't investigate learning. This is an investigation of experience in a course. And experience is really different from learning. And in fact, the things that we think might lead to positive experiences don't always lead to positive learning experiences. So we have to keep that in mind with any study that focuses solely on perceptions of experience. So let's dive into the data and take a look at the response to one particular question, which was, how frustrated were you when trying to find items in this task? And all of the survey responses are on a 5-point scale, from not at all frustrated, which is coded as a 1, to very frustrated, which is coded as a 5. And then the researchers are presenting an average of all responses. So you'll see in this graph that there's quite a lot to look at here, but in general, in the original course, which is green here, the score is pretty close to not at all frustrated for all of the different tasks. Now for each of these tasks in the low findability course, the researchers made changes that they thought would make it more challenging for students to actually complete the task. And that's borne out in the data here. We can see that for every task, the students report higher levels of frustration in the low findability course. And I'm just showing the results of this one particular question, but they also investigated the learner's self-efficacy. And what that means is how confident they feel in their own ability as a learner. And they found that it declined for those individuals who were enrolled in the low findability courses, but it stayed constant for those in the original course. And so this suggests that there really are some deleterious effects on learners for courses that are disorganized or confusing. So that brings us to some specific recommendations for instructors. First of all, I'd recommend that you pre-plan the structure of your course. Actually think about how learners are going to move through the course, and then map that onto the learning management system that you're using so that you can design a sequence of learning that makes sense and is organized. Secondly, I'd use repeatable structure. That means that when students are given an assignment, they're always receiving the assignment in the same way and through the same communication channels. If it's possible with your learning management system to integrate a calendar such as Google Calendar, I think that's a really good idea because that way students can use their own calendar to track their assignments and deadlines. And then finally, perhaps most importantly, I'd recommend user testing. What this means is that you actually take the course that you've created and you put it in front of some prospective users and get their feedback. So you could have your friends or colleagues look at courses and give their feedback, or you could even sit down and watch as a student goes through the course and find out where they're getting stuck. I want to conclude by saying that there isn't a lot of research on this particular area, but it also does make a lot of sense that an organized course would lead to better outcomes for students. So I think that this is a pretty robust recommendation based upon even a limited amount of research. Thanks for watching. You're free to reuse this video for internal training in your school, but please do not reuse it for any commercial purposes.